Thanks so much for joining us, and Happy New Year to you. Um, Normally, we start off kind of way back thinking about how you got into badminton, but I like to chat about the nationals first of all, because obviously
Yeah.
it wasn't that long ago, and you were incredible, and you were so close in both events.
Yeah.
20 in the third, and I was just watching it, thinking, "Hope's going to do it. She's really going to do it." Um, what was your take on it? How did it go for you?
Yeah. I think I was just really pleased overall. It was so tough at the time to take. Like emotionally, there was there was really nothing left after both finals. But I was really pleased to make both of them and the way that we played to get to them, and to be honest, in the finals as well. Was just happy that we could play well. It was gutting to be so close and to lose out in both, but I would rather have played like we did and lost close like that than not played well and just sort of lost quite easy. So I was very pleased with it overall.
It was amazing. You shouldn't be hard on yourself. You were super close, and obviously you've got next year and the year after to make sure you cross that line if that's what you want to do. But obviously, winning for you is something that you are well used to. Going back through all of your different kind of national achievements, particularly in the youth levels, eight kind of national titles across varying events. Um, does that feeling of winning kind of change at all? Does it get any easier with the previous kind of victories that you've had throughout the several years throughout the junior ranks?
Um, the feeling of winning hasn't changed at all. No, I still have my favourite moments, um, but no, it hasn't gotten any um, less enjoyable or like satisfying. It's probably gotten a little bit more relieving as the years have gone on, but mostly, yeah, it was just always nice. Best feeling. Still the best.
How do you find switching between events? Because sometimes it's not that long on the same day where you're, having a whether it's quarterfinal, semi-final, or like the nationals this year, having both events in a short amount of time. Obviously, the tactics and the play is quite different. How do you find kind of switching between the two?
Funny you ask because I'm literally just transitioning, I guess, to play just mixed. So I'm no longer playing women's anymore. But um, yeah, nationals was really not that long ago, so I guess I could still probably give that a fair comment. But it depends, I think, on how much you train like both of them. So I trained women's for probably almost a year completely without any mixed training, and then went back into some mixed training and felt like so lost, so confused with where I was supposed to be going. And now, well, up until nationals, I was training mostly mixed. Um, but it is a little bit weird going into one straight after the other because they're so different tactically, but you don't have time to warm up your tactical brain, obviously, because if you're playing a mixed match, it's so totally different to a women that you don't really, like you could physically warm up and make sure that you're ready, to go in that sense. But when it comes to stuff like tactical, play in games, it's so different. You've sort of got to make it up on the spot or just try and see how quickly you can get into it without making the wrong choices.
Do you find yourself naturally going to play some shots, having previously played the levels and switching to the mixed, or vice versa, and just thinking, oh, it's going to take a few rallies to kind of get the subconscious brain to kind of kick in?
Yeah, sometimes I think it's at the nationals. I noticed playing one game of mix, and I went into a women's doubles match afterwards, and I'm still looking to come into the net. Like I'll defend and move forward, and then in the first few rallies, I'm like, right, I'm playing women's now. It's it's a little bit. So I would be the net player in, if I was playing women's, I would be the net player in a partnership anyway. So it would be sort of natural, I guess. But yeah, to quite a large extent, I felt that in going into one of our women's games after playing a mix was, it's just quite funny, really. You do have a few rallies at the start where you're thinking, yeah, this isn't women's, but you've got to adapt a little bit.
Do you find yourself noticing the difference in intensity in training at all? Because obviously you mentioned having different spells training for both, or some spells training for just one discipline. For those that don't know too much about how they are different, how would you give like an example or a bit of an insight to how the training might be different for each of the levels or mixed disciplines?
Yes. If you're training women's, it would be more open rally style. A lot of mid rear work, a lot of mid court work, not too much net work, because simply at top level they don't have many net battles. You know, they're lifting, clearing out quite a lot. So it's very, in comparison to mixed training, it can be a little bit slow. But in terms of, you know, the actual speed of it, it isn't slow, but when you're comparing the two together, they are very different. So mix would be a lot more tactical training, like wise, a lot more net training for me, obviously. And then there'd be a lot of defense. So there would be a little bit for women as well, but again, that would be quite open, rally based, you know, big core, lots of high lifting, lots of tight nets, slow drop, slices, things like that. Whereas mix is just a lot faster. And then you've got men's, which is another level up, but don't do that.
Do you find that it affects your endurance? As you mentioned with the women's, obviously the rallies tend to be a lot longer, and as you said, a lot more lifting and clearing, as opposed to mix being quite short and sharp. Do you find that it affects your fitness and your training for it off court that isn't to do with your kind of tactics and shot practice?
What do you mean?
In terms of like having longer rallies and having to be able to not tire it as easily, and having the intensity being a little bit less because perhaps you're playing more lifts and more clears, as opposed to kind of in mixed, you're ready to have to, take the short, sharp steps and kind of get the net kill or play that precise net shot. Is it a difference in intensity is what I'm trying to say in terms of the speed on the court?
Yeah. I think with mixed, the speed comes from like sudden movements. So it sounds a little bit silly, but if I put it like, if you had a long rally mixed as well, especially as a woman at the net, you don't really notice because you're trying to do everything so quickly, and then the rally finishes, and then you realize that you're actually really tired because you're not consciously moving, halfway across the court and then back another halfway across the court, right to the net. It's more about, you're moving your feet a lot at the net, even though you might not be hitting it, or in defense, and then maybe you've hit a block and you've got to rush forward. But because it's so quick all the time, you sort of don't have time to think about if you're tired. Whereas in women's, rallies are generally a lot longer as our matches in women's doubles, but you've just got much more time in the rally, even though the intensity is still very, very high. You've just got more time to think, oh, wow, I'm tired.
Speaking about both events then, and talking about pairings and partnerships, obviously they can change a lot over the years, and it is so dependent on how you are around each other and your understanding of people's positions and what strengths your partner has and how you can utilize both of yours together. What in your opinion makes like a decent pairing? Because you've obviously played with lots of different people at very high levels. Is there any kind of keys that you think that makes it that much more successful?
I think the obvious thing, which is probably the most important thing, is personalities. So obviously it's easy if you get on with your partner to start with, but if you don't, it's the work that you both got to put in to understand each other more. So with me and Stephen at the minute, I think we gel quite well, play style and just off court anyway. So it's quite easy, but you still got to, there's things where, you know, I might be feeling a certain emotion in a game and he doesn't understand how to maybe respond to it to make sure I'm back, you know, in a good way. Whereas I might be the same towards him. It's just things that you've got to find out. So in terms of like playing style, because obviously if you get on but your playing style is a bit similar, it doesn't necessarily work. If you've got two shot makers or maybe risk takers, then you know more the creative player. If you've got two of those in a partnership, it can sometimes mean that the work rate won't always be there. So if you've got someone that's, you know, consistent, works hard, strong, with someone that's creative, is usually a really good pairing. But you've obviously got plenty of people that are both creative and strong at top level. So, you know, they obviously gel and play very well together.
Yeah, amazing. Did you have a preference growing up between the different disciplines, or have you just thought, you know, you like them both?
I didn't have too much of a preference until maybe, I guess it's quite early to be honest, under 17. But the game in women's changes so much as you get older and you don't realize it until a certain point. So it'll be like, you know, there'll be a point where you realize, or someone tells you you're watching, you know, women's doubles, that you realize that it's mainly endurance based. And, you know, there's a certain type of way to play women's doubles. So in mixed, you've got your own, like every pair has their own style. You don't have to play a certain way. Whereas in women's, you know, to be beating the top pairs or to at least keep up with them, you've got to be playing a certain way or be, you know, you've got to be of a certain quality in a certain area. So mixed for me has always been the favourite. Just because I like the tactical element and the skill element, which I don't think you can use as much in women's. But it's similar because I like watching men's doubles as well. So my favourite disciplines to watch would probably be mixed and men's, just because of the pace and speed, you know. And you've still got absurd amounts of skill in men's doubles as well. So yeah, mix has always taken it for me.
Have you ever had any players that you look towards and think, I really like that kind of skill element of the game as someone to just to watch and see how they develop? Or do you like to just practice different skills without having kind of an influence?
There have been like a couple of players that I've watched and thought I really admire them for their skill, because I don't think, well, there's a few players obviously at the top that are really skillful, but you don't always get to see it. So there could be some really skillful women's doubles players out there, but you wouldn't see it too much because of the event. So I think one would have to be Natsir. Obviously, she's not playing anymore, but that's what she was known for, I guess. And then plays women's doubles, but Pearly Tan. And I think her partner's similar, actually. But yeah, no, I generally just sort of skill-wise make things up as I'm going. So it doesn't always come from watching. Usually just comes from somewhere up in the head.
You've got some decent reels on the social media showing some of those skillful plays. They're amazing. Taking you back to 2017, your under 17 mixed title. That's
Yeah.
quite an accomplishment. How did that feel being at such a young age on the European circuit?
Yeah.
Being amazing.
It's still my favourite win. Don't think there's not anything that comes close to it, but I would never really, if someone asked me what's your favourite one today, it would still be that one after, years of it, being one, I guess. But yeah, I don't think it really hits you for a little bit afterwards either, because for a tournament like that, we played the team event first, and then it was the individual, and we'd not underperformed in the team event, but we hadn't done quite as well as we'd like to have done. I think we got bronze, and then went into the individual, trying to be a bit more positive after what had happened. Not that it was, terrible disaster or anything, but we were just a little bit disappointed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't actually say I remember, thinking or what I thought before each round, because it sort of just was like, not really thinking about where we'd get to, or the semis or the quarters, or we'd look who we'd got obviously, and maybe next round, but it was nothing more than that. And then I remember looking at the whole draw after the tournament had gone, like a couple of days after, and being like, yeah, wow, we there was quite a few people in that tournament. It's just weird when you looked at it, like it was there were so many pairs and players and rounds, and then it's just us two at the end. It was really weird, but yeah, no, it's still my favorite to date.
I mean, it does take a little bit of time to go through all of your different victories. I think there's something like 66 on just Bounton England tournaments alone, so that's pretty decent. And obviously, you've got the junior nationals titles in both events. Was it after the 2017 mixed title that you were for the second time in the local Leicester Mercury Awards, Sportswoman or Young Sportswoman of the Year? I got it down as two different times here. Am I right? 2015, 2018?
Yeah, one was, I think, junior sportswoman, and the other was just sportswoman. Yeah, I think so.
Amazing, because they follow some pretty big names in the world of sport. So obviously Nigel Pearson at the time for the Leicester City manager, and Mark Selby, who was a 4 times world champion of snooker. How does it feel to be put and compared with some of these people like that? Does it give you any pressure to kick on, or is it just nice to be acknowledged?
Yeah, I think it was just nice to be there at the time, because there's not, in terms of, events that you go to when you're that age, there's nothing that I had been to that was as fancy as that, I guess. I'd done a couple of, I'd had a couple of awards before that, and I'd maybe done 1 or 2, not speeches, but I'd spoken in front of quite a few people, maybe once or twice before. But yeah, I don't remember whether I expected to win that. I don't think I did. But it was just nice to be there. Just, you had a little program where you could see all the nominees, and that was quite interesting as well, just looking through all the events and stuff. But no, yeah,
sneaky heads up, being like, you really should come to this in case you get the award. I always wonder whether they let people know beforehand, whether they're actually.
No, because I remember sitting there just shaking, because I was like, you're not sure whether you're going to win or not, and what do you do if you do win, and you hope you don't trip up if you do win, and you have to walk up, stuff like that. So yeah, no, it was just an enjoyable experience. I will remember. I just remember sitting there as well. The whole place, it wasn't like a monumental thing, but at the time it just felt really cool to be involved.
So obviously, since then, it's just been onwards and upwards. loads of different results that we've already talked about, but 2019 as well, in the mixed doubles and the women's doubles, reaching the final of the Welsh International.
Yeah.
Do you set yourself targets, or do you just think I'm going to go into everything, thinking that and believing that I can win it? How does it work for somebody that's started at such a young age and had so many accomplishments already? Kind of, where do you see yourself going from here?
For me, it's very individual, I think. But for me, there's not as much like a singular target that I would set for a tournament, or maybe a general one. It would literally just be to play as well as I can, because if I'm coming out of a tournament or a game and I'm thinking that I didn't do everything I could have done, or didn't try everything I could have tried, it just annoys me. It'll just bug me until the next tournament. So I try and make sure I do everything I can to play as well as I can. And if I lose, I'll always be disappointed. But if I come off, give it a few days and I'll think, actually, I'm happy with how I played at least. So for me, it's more about that, going into a tournament with that mindset. But also, having belief that you can get to a certain point, depending on the tournament you're playing. But there's a balance between being realistic and being confident. Because I think if you're too confident, it can be a little bit dangerous or disappointing if you don't get to where you think you could have got to, or something like that. Whereas if you're not confident enough, then it can obviously go the other way and just probably not perform as well as you could. So yeah, don't set like plain goals. It's more about just going into it, see how it goes, and try and deal with what's happening at the time.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Is there any other extra advice you could give to a lot of young players, aspiring players that will probably be watching this thinking, I've been in that situation where I've put too much pressure on myself, or the expectation to go and win something and been bitterly disappointed if they've had a bad day, like everybody does, or not having enough confidence in yourself? What would you say to kind of some of the younger players who are just kind of starting out?
I struggled a lot with other people's opinions. So there'd be expectation from myself, and that would always be a decent amount of expectation, but a lot of it came from what I thought other people would think, if based on whatever result I got. And once I managed to forget about that, it was so much easier to deal with what was happening just in the moment, because you're not, you're thinking about your performance, how you're performing, or your tactics, or are your feet moving enough, things like that. As opposed to, are they watching my game? Like, what are they thinking? I'm 10-4 down. What people's opinions are watching, stuff like that. It really doesn't matter. So it's easier said than done, of course. But if people find they're struggling with things like that, with expectations from people who aren't themselves, or people who are there, if they're thinking their coach is expecting them to do something, or their parents are expecting a result, things like that, it's not worth the mental struggle at the end of the day, because they don't have to perform. They're not the ones that have to compete. They're not going through the nerves. So yeah, I think that would be the most important one to give out that I've experienced.
Thanks for that. I think that'd be really helpful to lots of different people. That's amazing. Talking about England, obviously you've been representing England for quite a while. Can you remember the first couple of times that you put on your shirt with kind of worn on the back in England, and how did it feel?
Yeah.
What's it like being part of the setup as the national kind of team?
Yeah. I think the first time I played for England, I was 12, and I played, or maybe 11, and I played, what was it, under-13 Danish Cup. And I remember getting the kit. So you got England t-shirt, skirt, shorts, whatever, and then you'd get a tracksuit, which tracksuit bottoms were just normal, and then you'd have like little England flag on the jacket and England on the back. And I remember getting the kit and walking around a local like shopping park with my mum, just being like, oh, this is, it's so cool. I'm just gonna wear it all the time, sort of thing. So yeah, I was absolutely chuffed when I first got picked. But yeah, it was always really fun to represent England on things like team events, especially just because you'd get to do the chant, and whenever you play team events at like championship tournaments such as Europeans, Worlds, it was just so fun for you all to be like, oh, matching t-shirts, matching jackets, whatever, and to be all stood trying to support each other and cheer and do your chants. That was always good fun. So yeah, I will always remember the first tournament I played, but after that it sort of all blends in.
Yeah, amazing. Do you enjoy all the travel that comes with it? Because obviously you're having to go to quite a lot of different places.
Yeah, I think when you're younger, it's such a novelty because I hadn't travelled much before traveling for like tournaments and stuff. So going away was really fun because you hadn't seen places before, or you're trying different foods or going to different airports, and usually flights wouldn't be too. They'd usually be anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours. It wasn't that bad. So I still enjoy it now, but it just is a little bit more tiring because days can be quite long, whereas you don't notice it so much when you're younger. So, for example, if you've got a 12 p.m. flight, you've still got to wake up. You've got to get there at at least 10 p.m., which means it takes 2 hours at the airport. You've got to leave at 8, wake up at 7. So you've got it's basically a whole day, even if it's just a 2-hour flight, which is a bit crazy. But actually getting there and seeing everything, even if we're not going for if we're not traveling into the city, if we're not seeing monuments, all of this stuff, then it's still nice to be there, just to be in a different environment, eat different food, different people, different weather, everything like that. So it's more I would say it's a challenge, but it's just an exciting one, because I feel like if you were traveling and you had the exact same environment, it would just be a bit boring. So it can be really challenging at times, but it is really exciting.
Is there much of a social scene amongst some of the players that you can compete against?
Yeah, there definitely is in some form. I think we've all said from anyway the girls' side on this team that we'd all like it to be a bit more sociable, just because it's actually a weird concept when you think about it, because technically you've just got the same bunch of players from every country traveling to the same place every now and then just to play a tournament. So, the fact that you're not, you might be best friends with 10, 15 people from different countries seems a bit weird if you're always, meeting up in the same place every 2 weeks. But no, it's still really friendly. And obviously there are people that, for example, like Scottish teams, stuff like that. Some of the guys here, they get on really well with them just because they're so close. So no, it is quite social.
Nice. If you don't mind, I've got a quick fire 10 questions to try and get through from different ones that
okay.
It's pretty much the same as I'm asking all of our athletes, but a lot of the answers are different. So the first one is, do you remember your first ever badminton racket?
I believe it might have been my first ever one. No, but I'm pretty sure it had a little handle. Yeah, like, you know, the little short rackets you get, because I started really young, about 3 years old. So my mum got me one with a tiny little handle for kids. I don't remember what brand it
Do you have a favorite racket of all time?
was. It's got to be mine now. Yeah, Nano Flare 700.
Oh, nice choice. All right. Do you have a toughest opponent to date?
Ooh. That's a good question. Ooh. I don't know, actually. That's a tough question.
Or one off?
No one comes to mind.
All right, no problem. This is what I don't like asking because I don't believe in tempting fate. But worst injury? I don't.
Oh, I haven't had one yet.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't want to ask it because I was thinking I don't think you've had many big ones.
But I'll still say the same thing in a couple of years' time. But no, I haven't had one yet, thankfully.
How would you stay injury free? What's the secret?
Um, to be honest, I think it's a little bit of luck with um, like body type. But I've done a lot of gym work since I was, yeah, what, 13? I've done quite a lot of gym work and like strengthening work, uh, not rehab, but injury prevention exercises, stuff like that.
Nice. I think I might know the answer to this one. Most satisfying victory.
Yeah, I'm going to say Europeans. It's got to be.
It would be. All right. Is there a funniest member, in your opinion, of the England setup?
um, I'll say it's quite a few actually. Yeah, there's. I think I'm going to say Harry Huang. Um, I would say Toby Penty, but he's not here anymore. But
Yeah.
that. Um, and Zach Browski.
Good choice. Good choice. Do you have a current or a couple of pieces of clothing that you like wearing more than others? Obviously, you've got lots of different stuff from John X, from us at YC. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you particularly like at the moment?
Um, it's really specific, but I wore one this morning, and it's the tops that are they're like white for most of it, and on the sleeves they've got a little bit of. They have two styles, but one sort of red on
Yeah.
the sleeves and the back. Those tops are my favourite tops at the moment. Um, and the jackets are always comfy.
Oh yeah, nice. All right. Out of these three rackets, none of which are the racket that you play with. If you had to
Mm-hmm.
switch from the Nani Flair 700 to one of
Yeah.
these, which would it be? And none of them are actually that similar. So let's see where we go with this. All right. 88D Pro,
Yep.
100 ZZ,
Yep.
Arc Saber 11 Pro.
Mm. Not the Arc Saber. I'm gonna go 88D on the way it looks.
Nice. I was surprised that you didn't say the 11 Pro because that's probably the closest in terms of balance and quality into yours. But yeah, how do you find the Nanoflare 800? Because they're quite popular, the 700s and the 800s. I often find people switching between the two. Have you ever played with the 800?
Never played with the 800, but I've always played with light rackets. So I've had like, I mean, I've gone through what my first racket when I like started training, well, properly at 9. I had someone gave me a head racket, and then I had Babolat, and then I've had Yonex for quite a few years. But I've always had headlight at least. So um, it would be weird for me to change. I think in the future, I'd probably look at changing to like an even balance. Um, but yeah.
Is it something that athletes spend a lot of time thinking about? Because obviously they're changing all the time. And the
Mm.
they compared with one a couple of years ago. Technology, string, tension, everything can make a difference to your game. Do you spend a lot of time thinking about that, or do you just kind of get to a point where you like your racket and the string, you kind of stick with that?
I think most people, especially, well, definitely with their rackets, they find one they like and they keep it for age. Like, you know, they probably won't change if they found one, unless, you know, something totally new comes out and it's, you know, maybe the same or better, something more suited to them. String, I think everyone always thinks about whether they like it in terms of, does it give them, you know, enough control or power, or is it too thin? Does it break too easily, or, you know, does it never break, or things like that? And especially when there's new types of string coming out, like I know when X-Bolt came out, there was a few players using it here, and some players loved it, some players didn't, you know, so they'll revert back. But there's always, you'll always have a favorite string, but I think it is always being thought about, because players are, you know, literally breaking strings, you know, all the time. So it's something that we have to think about, I guess.
So I'm just on it. Oh yeah, that's the Xbox 63 over there. But there's the newer one as well, which is even thinner, I believe. Anyway, moving on from that. Do you get nervous before your matches? And if so, do you have anything that kind of gets you in the zone or helps to get you focused for the game?
Yeah, so yes, I do usually, but there is, I don't know if you would call it unusual, but I always like to spend not more time, but I guess a little bit more focus on preparing mentally before a game than physically. So I always do a proper warm up and always have a knock up, you know, always chat about tactics way before the game. But there gets to a point where I've been warming up for a while and I'll literally just sit down 10 minutes, not to think about the game, but just to think about, you know, other things that aren't too related, or, you know, things that would maybe make me feel a little bit better or things like that. Because in the past, if I've stayed in a hall for too long before my match, I get quite tense because there's matches going on. So even though I'm not, you know, I'm not invested in that match, or I'm not actually in that match, I still feel like there's tension with, you know, 5, 6 matches around the hall, and it will just, you know, you get so involved. So I've always taken myself into a, you know, quiet corner in the hall or somewhere else that doesn't have much going on, sit there for a second, well, a few minutes, and just take yourself away from the environment, not completely, but to a certain extent, because I think if you're involved in it so much before the game, it can put so much on the actual game itself. You know, for some people it's better to be hyped up, so they'd go into it, you know, playing their best. But for me, if I'm nervous, I just need to take a little minute, just take myself away from it a little bit.
So do you have a favourite shot to play?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a cross net. I can't decide backhand or forehand, but it would be a cross net.
So many people like that shot, but for so many people, it's a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 100 because they hardly ever come off. One thing I forgot to ask you earlier, talking about advice that you've given, which is really good. Do you have any particular good advice that you've been given that stuck with you? Because I'm sure you've had lots of different coaches, whether it's in a local setup, in the national setup. What kind of advice do you find helpful in your game?
I think mine would actually be more advice that I've been given for not off court, but mentally, or like how to deal with things. So I had Andy Wood as a coach from, I think, 9 years old for quite a while, at least 5 years, and he was so crucial to, you know, how I am the player that I am today. He focused a lot on skill and, you know, racket skills or control when we did sessions together. And I think, not that I wouldn't, you know, naturally want to do that as a player if I hadn't been coached by him, but he helped me develop them so well. But he always used to So we had 1 hour sessions, and we would quite often just spend half the time chatting. So it wouldn't be about, general things, but it wouldn't be really intense, badminton things either. It would sort of be, oh, so what do you think when this happens? Or, sort of things like that. And I think the most important thing as well with coaches was that they helped me to understand who I am, which sounds really weird, but by us having conversations about what I wanted, or how I felt when this happened, or why I wasn't very happy at this moment in time, it helped understand me better, because they questions that then I actually answered in my own head. I understood. So that would actually be the most important thing that I've gained.
Yeah, nice. It's something that isn't really spoken about a lot, particularly in badminton not being classed as mainstream as other sports, and the psychology and mental support away from results is massive, particularly because of COVID and the pandemic. I mean, I'm sure that massively affected your ability to not only compete, but not only train, but just do the other things in life that you enjoy doing besides badminton. I mean, how did you stay motivated and stay on the same kind of trajectory? Because obviously you've come out the other side just winning and being amazing.
So I actually didn't. I didn't play for 3 months when COVID not came, but made its way through. So I wasn't enjoying training right before COVID, and it was, in a way, it was quite lucky, because I wouldn't have been able to have that time off at all without it. So I got a huge chunk of time off when I actually needed it. And, at that point, no one could train anyway. So it would only have been things that I was doing at home, like running, or, ab circuits, or, bodyweight stuff. So, no one could go anywhere. And then after that, I went on holiday for about a month, came back, well, still lockdown, COVID and stuff. And then came back and just wasn't happy with how I felt. So I started doing a bit more exercise, like fitness type thing in the garden while I was isolating 2 weeks, and then slowly got into the gym. So I was gymming more than I was playing on court, because I just really enjoyed it, and then gradually got back into training, and then just basically fixed itself. If you time off was really important. Not recommending that everyone does that, but it helped me figure out what I was not liking or not enjoying, how to change it, things like that.
Do you get in a dare I say the word normal, in a normal season, do you get much downtime? Because it seems as if as soon as competitions kind of finish, it seems like something else is then replacing it. I mean, how much time do you get off in a year to just
you don't really
for you?
Yeah, you don't really. So I think a problem, or something that I would like to work on, but it's sort of a little bit impossible at the moment, is the balance between playing and things outside of it, because it's so difficult, because I think badminton players, especially down here, they just don't have enough time. So, some of us will be doing coaching. So like, I'll give you, like today, for example, I will get up at 6:30, get up at 6, leave at 6:30, train. And then after all my training, I'll finish at about 4, leave at 4. I'll go and coach from 5:30 till 7, and then I'll get 8 or 7:30. So, it's not too much time. And, I could have broken a couple of strings, so I'll need to train 2 of my rackets, and I'll need to have dinner. So I only do that twice a week, but it just means that you don't really have the opportunity to be able to do other things as such. Because can't remember what the question was now. I've completely diverted off it.
Just about trying to find time to do the things other than badminton, which is obviously a massive part of your life, but it's not everything. And it's just about, do you get the time to do other things that you enjoy doing, whether it's just catching up with mates and family or just doing other things just to make sure that you're able to set in between.
Yeah. So I guess, you've got tournaments from September to December, and then you start again maybe late Jan, early Feb until probably May. And then once they finish, you're just straight into summer training. So that's like fitness based, you're doing a lot of bikes, you're doing a lot of circuits, you're doing a lot of running, multi-feed work, things like that. And then, you'll get a holiday somewhere, but you don't know when, and you don't know for how long. So it is tough because you could play 5 tournaments in a row and not get too much rest. Yeah. The training load will decrease a little in between time, so you're not absolutely, knackered for tournaments. But yeah, in terms of like days off or time off, don't get too much.
So what's next on the calendar then? What's the next competition for you? It must be only a couple of weeks away.
Actually, nationals again. So I think is it the 10th of Feb? Something like that.
Why are they so close to the last?
I'm not actually sure.
Really surprising when I saw that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I don't know whether they're like replacing it and doing it in February instead of December, or whether they're going to have one in December again. I'm not too sure, but that's in Nottingham, so that'll be slightly different atmosphere, environment, whatever. And then after that, my next one is Portugal.
Nice. All right. Well, we wish you all the best. Maybe in a couple of weeks, who knows? Maybe you'll overturn that 3-setter in the final. We'll certainly. Maybe. But no pressure whatsoever. And I just hope you have an amazing year ahead, because you surely are going places, and onwards and upwards. So look forward to seeing how you're getting on. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, talk to us. On behalf of everyone at YC, Happy New Year, and see you later in the year for many more successes, I'm sure. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Cheers. All the best. Bye.
Bye.